Hey, how's it going, do-it-yourselfers? Got a good one for you today. Today I'm going to be answering a question that was asked by one of my subscribers. Can you do Volkswagen GTIs next? Are they good for beginners looking to modify their car? Question mark. Reliable? Question mark. Alright, so those are two different questions and they're going to have different answers. So let's get started. Alright, so from the question, I'm getting a sense that you're looking for an entry-level vehicle for modification and tuning purposes. Now, if you're looking at a GTI, I would recommend you purchase a Volkswagen GTI from 2002 to 2006. These cars come with a 1.8 liter dual overhead cam, turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, and you have options for a 5-speed manual or a 5-speed automatic transmission. The engines on these cars produce 180 horsepower and 173 pound-feet of torque, and these cars have a curb weight of 2,932 pounds. All right, again, first part of your question in regards to tuning. In my opinion, if you're looking for an entry-level vehicle for tuning and modifying purposes, these cars are great. At the factory, they have a respectable 6.4 second time for their 0 to 60 mile per hour, and not so respectable 15 seconds for a quarter-mile run. But the best thing about them is that they're forced induction already. They have a turbocharger. Usually adding horsepower and torque to these types of cars is not that difficult. For example, you can get a stage 1 tune for your ECU from APR. APR being the company that makes tuning software and hardware and other modifying parts for these cars. Without any engine modification, with only a stage 1 tune on these cars, you can add an extra 50 horsepower and 70 pound-feet of torque. Now, if you want to go another step and get a stage 2 tune from APR, you don't have to do a whole lot again. You maybe replace the diverter valve on these cars, upgrade the downpipe, get a catback exhaust system, and maybe an intercooler and other minor things on your engine. With a stage 2 tune from APR, you can increase that horsepower to 250 horsepower, and you can increase the torque from 173 out of the factory to almost 300 pound-feet of torque with a stage 2 tune and replacing a couple of engine parts. All right, so yeah, basically when you're looking into getting into modifying cars in order to get more horsepower and torque, there's two routes. In my opinion, you can already start off with an engine that's forced induction with a turbocharger in this case, or you can go with a different car that is naturally aspirated, and you'll end up probably adding a turbocharger, a supercharger to that car. Now that car, the benefits of that is that you can start off with the car with a smaller engine and it's super light, and then when you add the supercharger or the turbocharger to that car, then you gain, your times are going to improve a lot. But in my opinion, for beginners, this is the better option. You're already starting off with a platform that was designed for forced induction, less of a chance of things going wrong. The engine was designed in a way to be able to handle more power, horsepower, and torque, whereas you go with a super light car, you're going to end up having to upgrade almost everything. You might have to upgrade the internals, like your connecting rods, bearings. Your transmission might not be able to handle the extra power you're going to force into that engine. So you're going to actually end up spending a lot more money when you spend less upfront and get that cheap, light car to modify and tune. Now, the GTI is not limited to 250 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque. However, if you want to make more power, that's the line where if you want to cross, you're going to have to spend a lot of money. Whereas the line with the engine out of, let's say, the old Honda Civic hatchbacks, the lines was a lot lower. You had to start spending a lot of money much earlier on. But with these engines, after the stage 2, where you get to 300 pound-feet of torque and 250 horsepower, if you want to go to stage 3, you would upgrade your turbochargers and you make more horsepower and torque. However, when you get to that point, you have to start rebuilding the engine and upgrading the internals of these engines, like the connecting rods, pistons, bearings, and all those things. So yeah, as an entry-level vehicle for tuning and modifying, these are, in my opinion, really good. But even better than that, they're affordable. You can find these for less than $5,000, at least where I live in Southern California. But add to that, generally speaking, you may be able to find one that's not beat up, like if you were to buy an old Civic or an Integra in the same year range that was good for modifying and tuning. Those tend to be, almost all of them with the manual transmission are probably modified and beaten up. So you really don't want to start off, if you're a beginner, with a car that needs a lot of work. You want to get one of these that's in decent shape with a manual transmission. All right, so in order to answer the second part of your question in regards to whether these cars are reliable or not, Well, I'm going to mention some known problems and issues on these cars, and then at the end, I'll give you my opinion about these cars. And first up, we're going to start with just an FYI. These engines, the 1.8 liters, do have a timing belt that has to be replaced at a certain interval. And these engines are an interference engine, which means if you don't replace that timing belt on time and it breaks, the valve will hit your pistons, be bent or broken up, leaving you having to either replace or rebuild the top end of your engine at the very best, or replace your engine entirely. So it's very important to make sure that the timing belt has been replaced on time. Usually, if the timing belt hasn't been replaced on time, they break, in my experience, around 115 to 225,000 miles. All right, so next, the number one and the biggest problem with these engines is going to be engine sludge, which if left untreated can cause catastrophic engine failure. Now, as far as why engine sludge happens, well, it has mainly to do with the turbocharger. This is a rather small turbocharger. It spins really fast, creates a lot of heat, and that heat can cook the oil inside the engine. Now, in order to remedy this, what you can do is to make sure you replace the engine oil every 5,000 miles with a fully synthetic Volkswagen approved engine oil, which would be the Volkswagen 502, I believe, engine oil. There's a list of compatible engine oils that you can buy in the US. Or you can get this, which is made in Germany, and this is what I use on my Audi with the 2.7 liter bi-turbo engine. And that's what you want to see on your engine oil, or you get an engine oil, a fully synthetic engine oil that stands up to the same standards. Now, obviously, you're going to be buying a used 2003 or 4 or 5 Volkswagen GTI, so it's important to make sure that the previous owner has taken care of the engine, has replaced the oil on time with a fully synthetic engine oil. Other things you can do in order to avoid engine sludge is to upgrade the oil filter to a bigger oil filter, thereby increasing the oil capacity of the engine. But even more important than that, you want to make sure that you allow for cooling down of the engine, or the engine oil to be exact, after a drive. Let's say if you go for a drive around town, you get back home, you don't want to turn the engine off right away. You want to sit there a little bit, allow for the engine oil cooler to do its job, cool down the hot oil that's been going through your turbocharger, and by doing that, you help avoid engine sludge. Because if you turn it off right away, that super hot oil in there is gonna start getting cooked, and that's what's gonna really cause engine sludge. All right, so next let's talk about the transmissions on these 1.8 liters. Now, if you're looking to buy a GTI for tuning and modifying, the odds are you're looking to buy a manual transmission. That's good because, the automatic transmission you want to avoid. It seems to be problematic. The valve body and the solenoids in there tend to go bad. Now, you might be able to get them fixed, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. It's just too much of a hassle. It can go bad again, not too long after you get it fixed. So just avoid the automatic transmissions, in my opinion. Stick to the manual transmissions. You're much better off. All right, next up. Now, remember I said they have a timing belt? Well, that's true, but they also have a timing chain for their camshaft chain tensioner on top of the cylinder head. Now, the chain itself, or the timing chain tensioner, doesn't seem to go bad on its own. It could get clogged due to engine sludge, but another problem that can happen is on the chain tensioner, you have two plastic brackets, one on top and one on the bottom of the tensioner that I can't show you right now, where the chain rides on. Now, over time, if you don't take care of your engine, you don't replace the oil on time, this chain can start digging a pretty deep groove into these plastic parts. And in the worst case scenario, these plastic parts can break, causing you to have really serious problems with the top end of your engine. And by the way, if you're wondering, this is a cylinder head out of a 2.8 liter naturally aspirated V6 Volkswagen engine, but the tensioner and the tensioning mechanism is pretty much the same when compared to the 1.8 liter engine. So yeah, these are best inspected when you replace the valve cover gasket or you're replacing the timing belt, everything is off. Actually, when you're replacing the timing belt, would be the best time to replace these if these go bad or starting to go bad. Actually, not just these, there's also a half moon seal back here. There's also a camshaft cap. There's a gasket for this chain tensioner that could leak. When you replace the timing belt, it's a good idea to replace all these items that I just mentioned. All right, other things that can go wrong on these engines, well, something that's really annoying is going to be the vacuum lines. These 1.8 liters have a lot of vacuum lines. Over time, they get dry, brittle, and they break, causing vacuum leaks and all sorts of performance issues. What I recommend you do is after a certain mileage, let's say 100,000 miles, you replace all the vacuum lines that you can get to. That way you avoid a lot of hassle and headaches in the future. And besides that, the secondary air pump on these cars can go bad as well. Replacing it is not super expensive, but it's a German car, so it's not cheap either. And if you live in a hot climate, another annoying thing that goes wrong on these is gonna be the display inside your cluster. Now, we're inside the garage and you can see it fairly okay, but if you were outside in the sun, I would really have a hard time making out what's on this display. Now, I'm gonna be replacing this pretty soon. Stay tuned for that video. But as far as my opinion on these cars being reliable or not, in good conscience, I cannot say that they're reliable cars. I would like to say they are, but they're not. It's just, maybe in the right hands, someone that knows a little bit about working on these engines, can do a lot of the maintenance himself, can do the oil changes exactly on time with the right oil, all of that. Maybe in the right hand, they can be reliable and last a long time. However, most people are just not gonna be into that. They're not gonna do that. They're not gonna spend the money. They're gonna, push everything back. The timing belt gonna cost a lot of money if they have to do it at the dealer or the shop, so they don't do it on time. The oil changes cost more money because you have to use the right oil. They don't do that on time, so over time it adds up. And then, if you were gonna buy a used car, you buy it from someone like that, then you're obviously not gonna be buying a reliable car. But if you're lucky enough to find one that's been taken care of really well, really carefully, and the guy's got the receipts to prove it, then I would definitely say that, if you buy that car and keep on taking care of it, then it would be not only a good car for tuning and modifying, but it would also be a reliable car for you. Alrighty, so if you like this video and want to support my channel, again, subscribe, hit that bell notification and the like button. If you want to support me even further, you can join me on my Patreon page where I'll be doing tool giveaways pretty soon. If you don't want to do that, you can also support me by simply watching another one of my videos. You can click on this one in this corner, the one below it, or click on any of my videos in the suggestion box. That will work as well. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.